What's up everyone, Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic and I have a collection update for you. And this one is special because this all came from one person who kindly gave this to me. I am talking about my good friend The Crypt over at Metal-O-Mania, and of course this is a plug-in for his channel as well because he's an awesome guy and he does killer interviews and plays awesome underground bands all the time. So there's a link below for his channel on YouTube, as well as his Facebook group. Definitely check that out as well. All sorts of fun mayhem going on there. So he sent me a batch of CDs as well as a whole bunch of other cool material, which I probably should have brought down here, but I forgot to. But I wanted to get the CDs out here because this was super cool of them. And a lot of this stuff I am not familiar with. A lot of this is very underground or very much unsigned and independent acts as well. I think there were only maybe 2 bands in here out of this stack that I had actually heard of. And, well, I mean, I like to check out underground stuff, so I have a whole heaping stack of it, and I'll tell you a lot of this is very thrashy. So if you're a big thrash fan, I might have some cool underground gems for you here. So anyway, check out his YouTube channel, check out his Facebook, and let's get right into this. Anger as Art, Fast as Fuck. This is their live album from 2018, and this was definitely the only one I was very familiar with. In fact, I actually covered one of the releases in a collection update not too long ago. This is straight up thrash metal, and again, this is a live recording, so, you know, I'm usually not big on live recordings. I usually don't collect them, I just go to the shows, but, you know, COVID. So, actually hearing a live recording was kind of cool. I have to say I was actually familiar with a good chunk of this because a lot of this comes from the 2 releases that I have by this band. In case you don't know, these guys are from California. They play straight up very old school thrash. I would say probably late 80s, early 90s, definitely a more aggressive style of thrash. There's even blast beats in here. And they sound like they're a really tight live act. This sounds really good. I think the vocals, I brought up the fact that I think they're a little bit over the top. I think they are more over the top live, but I think with the live environment, that really works. The performance sounds fun, it's energetic, it's thrashy, it's fast as hell. They're kind of just bullet train songs and just whooping ass. So yeah, if you're a fan of thrash and you want to hear some live stuff, definitely check this out. It's pretty solid. Angry Again, Ravage. This is the 3rd album from this Swiss groove metal / thrash metal act. I'm pretty sure they named themselves after the Megadeth song. If not, you know what? You should have. It's a good song. It's definitely more on the groove side, though there are tons of thrashy elements, and I gotta say, these guys have a really good knack for melody. There are lots of big, like, Iron Maiden harmonies on here, but for the most part, it really hangs on to that kind of, like, mid-90s groove metal sound, and then mix that with some slightly more modern bands like Unearth or Lamb of God. It really has that feel to it. Big, chuggy breakdowns, and these guys are really solid at writing hooks. I gotta say, this album does run a little bit long, but I like the meat and potatoes approach. The only thing I didn't care for on here were the clean vocals. I didn't think they were as strong as the harsh vocals. The harsh vocals were very powerful, and they really drove the songs. I love the galloping rhythm on Warlord especially. That is just a fun song to listen to. And the song Destruction really kind of brings out that old school groove metal sound. I mean, it just has a massive hook that brought me back to, like, 1995. Good stuff. I definitely want to check out more by this band. This was a solid release, and I believe this was independently released, no label. So definitely check these guys out. If you love old school groove metal and just thrash and melody, I mean, this is pretty much it right here. Check it out. Cerebral Desecration, Further Than the Bottom. This is the 2nd album from this Texas death thrash band, and this is also independently released. Now, this band loves the chugathons. Really close to that Vader decapitated feel, lots of syncopated chugs, and just brutal breakdowns. Heavier in hell, but never loses that thrash feel too, so this is that cool death thrash blend that I love where it really has both elements going very strong on it. Really tight production, pretty compressed, but it sounds really good for what they're going for because all those chuggy riffs come through. You get a good mix of like Deicide, like machine gun riffing, and then you get some almost kind of like brutal death breakdowns like Dying Fetus. Really solid stuff. I really enjoyed this one. This was honestly one of my favorites out of this bunch, and I definitely want to check out more by this band for sure. So if you love death thrash and you love just chuggy ass death metal, definitely check this band out. Eyes of the Living, War on Dead / More Dead. I'm not entirely sure if this is a reissue or not. I think it is, because it includes some extra tracks from the previous version that I saw. Now this came out on Pavement Music, and I really haven't picked up a release from Pavement Music in a while. I wasn't actually sure that they were still around, and this came out in 2019. This is a Philly-based groove slash thrash metal act. Again, a lot of thrash metal in this pack. And again, this has that sort of like mid-90s groove metal sound. Though it's kind of interesting just because of the sound of the band. It reminds me of like an 80s thrash band transitioning to groove metal, but doing it pretty well. They managed to retain all the big hooky riffs and maybe coming off more aggressive to their previous sound, which doesn't exist really in this case, but I mean, in terms of the comparison, maybe. The vocal production's kind of strange because I can't tell if the vocals are being doubled or it was gang vocals a lot, but I don't know, it's kind of something I noticed on there. And there's some weird atmospheric stuff that doesn't necessarily fit. There's an interlude on here, slash Aftermath, I think that's the name of it. And then the song I Am Alone has a really kind of drawn out industrial beginning, which didn't seem to fit like the mode of the band. The mode of the band feels very meat and potatoes, in your face, groovy stomps, circle pits, that kind of thing. You know, there really wasn't much room for a little like, you know, Nine Inch Nails-y thing on there, at least, you know, how I heard it. And I think because this has extra tracks in here, this kind of feels very long, and it just kind of feels very long for the style because there weren't a tremendous amount of different ideas on here, but rather just, you know, a few really good ideas. I really like the riffs I brought. Again, that meat and potato feel. It has a good pace to it, but it kind of runs a little bit long. But overall, I enjoyed it. This was a pretty solid release. And again, if you like 90s groove metal, definitely some thrash on here too. Definitely some more upbeat moments and just big chuggy riffs. Definitely check this out. This was pretty solid. All right, we have a pair from Morbius. This is their debut album, came out in 1995, Alienchrist, and this is a reissue of their 1990 demo, The Shades Below, which also includes some stuff from other demos. Now, these were both reissued on Last Apparitions Records. I think this one was 2015, this one was 2014, and this is an old school death metal band based out of Virginia. And it is pretty much that. Actually, this band reminded me a lot of specifically Brutality out of Florida. This has kind of a Tampa sound. Now, this one being the more polished one, I guess, for some odd reason, I prefer the production on the demos versus this. The guitars sound really thin on here, and that kind of hampers it a bit. But songwriting-wise, really good. Very groove-laden, but also very technical. The vocals, not necessarily recorded the best. I think they kind of sound like a little out front and very compressed, like not a lot of effects on it, you know, no reverb, kind of dry, but they're good. He enunciates well, he's got a good deep growl, and I believe one of the other members on here backs up with some screams. It sounds really good. The songwriting in here is fantastic, as is on here. Now, I like this one a little bit better on production side, but they're about the same on songwriting in terms of just having like a really cool 90s death metal sound. This one, I think the fact that it's a little bit muddier and a little bit murkier just kind of lends itself a bit more to just a straight up old school death metal sound. I think this one also starts off a bit better. The first track on here, though it is good, Inverted Baptism, kind of starts slow, and then the rest of the album just sort of takes off. This one pretty much starts off swinging, and then when you get to the second demo on here, which I believe was called Realm, it's a little bit rougher. The first demo is actually recorded really well, or at least they remastered that one really well. The second one, you know, at least the stuff from the second one, I don't know if they put the entire thing on here, very rough, very muddy, and it was kind of hard to make out stuff on there. But overall, this is an awesome underground band that I had no idea existed up until my buddy Crypt gave these to me. So that is really awesome because this is the kind of stuff I love. I love finding old school underground bands that are awesome, that people should know more about, and this is definitely one of them, so thank you very much there. And of course, check these guys out. If you love old school death metal, definitely check out their releases. I believe they have one other full length. I think they are still around, mostly in just like a touring capacity. I don't know if they're writing any more music, but if they are, I'd like to check them out. So yeah, definitely check these out. Hangmans Park, Greed Machine. This is the debut EP from this South Bend metalcore, hardcore act. I don't know, they're kind of a blend of a lot of different things. It's very sludgy, groove-laden, you know, definitely very breakdown heavy, so it definitely has that core sound to it. But I don't know, it's an older sound. It kind of reminds me again of like stuff I used to pick up when, you know, Victory Records was still like kind of in its infancy. The mix on this though is pretty rough. I mean, it kind of sounds more like a demo. That might have been what they were going for, trying to give it more of a raw sound. But this debut really screams that they are a young band and they have a lot of different influences and they're trying to squeeze them all in there. You have very melodic leads and then straight up old school hardcore breakdowns, harsh vocals and cleans. The vocals are not particularly strong. I really wasn't into the harsh vocals or the cleans, unfortunately, on here. And as much as there are a lot of cool riffs on here, it doesn't flow very well in terms of like transitions on the next part. It feels very cluttered. But again, this screams young band and they want to make a big first impression, so they want to squeeze in as many different dynamics as they can, and they don't all fit. There are some moments in here I really did like, but overall, this was kind of hard to get into. But this is just my opinion, and I'm a picky shit, so I encourage you to check out the link that I will leave below for this band, as well as all the other bands. Definitely check them out, give them a chance. This might be your thing, it just isn't really mine right here, and regardless of how this one sounds, I would definitely check out a follow-up by these guys because there is definitely talent in this band. It just needs to come together a little bit better. Either way, check it out. Hollow, Shattered. This is the debut EP from this German thrash/groove band. A lot of that. Pretty much exactly as I said, groove metal and thrash metal sort of put together, though I think this favors groove more than thrash. In fact, one thing I could definitely say on this is some more up-tempo moments would be good because they kind of really stick that just straight up 4/4 time groove almost the entire time. The riffs are good, there's plenty of really good melodies. There is a bit of an issue I have with the vocals on here. I don't think he's necessarily bad, I just think his approach is very dry and it sounds painful. It sounds like he's really damaging his voice with every growl, and the production on it is very dry, so he sounds like he's right there next to you growling it versus, you know, having a little bit of like reverb on it or some, you know, additional filters on it. And it really sticks out as, unfortunately, a negative on here. The music on here I think is really good. I don't think much of it stands out though, because they kind of stick to one main thing. And when they actually threw out some thrasher moments, like namely the last track, These Scars, that song really stood out to me because it kind of broke it up a little bit. But again, this is a band I would definitely check out a follow-up to. The riffs are there, the melodies are there. I think they just need to vary it up a little bit. And, you know, the vocalist, I just think those vocals need to improve, not only for the band's sake, but for his sake, because that sounds like it's going to tear your throat apart. And you want to have a long career at this because, I mean, you clearly love metal because that comes out in a lot of the songs. So I am curious to see where they go from here. But yeah, definitely check this out. Electrikeel, To Protect and Sever. This is this Spanish thrash metal act's debut EP. This is a three-piece crossover thrash band, but I would say kind of just like regular thrash too. It's interesting because they write pretty long songs for a crossover band, but that crossover sort of punk energy is all across here, and I love it. The production actually has kind of a throwback feel to it. The guitars are like a little bit dirtier. They don't scream like super polished. I like the fact that there's this sort of grit to the tone. And vocally, it kind of reminds me a lot of like Tom Angel Ripper or Matt Harvey. It's kind of, you know, shrieky and snarly, and really dug that. The longest song on here, One Day Closer to Death, I was surprised, like, you know, looking at it, I was like, all right, this is an 8-minute song by a crossover thrash band. Generally crossover, you're thinking short doses, very explosive, very punky. That's still all there, but they actually managed to stretch this out and make a really good song with lots of dynamics in it. So I thought that was really good. And as an added bonus, you get a full-on thrash cover of Dead Kennedys' Holiday in Cambodia. And they rip it apart in an awesome way. I love it. It was really, really good. 4 tracks. I think all of them were solid. I really dug this. This is a killer up-and-coming band. I definitely want to check out more by them. Their name is odd, but I don't care. It's fun, and it's thrashier than hell. The riffs are present. All that good stuff. If you love thrash, pretty sure you'll dig this. So yeah, definitely check this out. Mnemocide, Feeding the Vultures. This is the debut full-length from this Swiss death metal act. This is some fierce modern death metal with some cool old-school nods. In fact, the riffs on Crash and Burn, the second track after you get past the intro, and there's a lot of ambience on here, and I'll get to that. Really reminded me a lot of bands like Vader and Cannibal Corpse, like those just ball-busting fucking riffs that they're known for. A lot of this is fiercely groove-laden, too, in terms of, like, sort of that, I don't know, anthemic war metal sort of sound, like, not like war metal, like the batshit crazy black and death metal shit, but I'm talking, like, Bolt Thrower, God Dethroned, that sort of thing. The riffs definitely scream that. They kind of border a little bit on melodic death metal, but I think they are still maybe just too heavy to be considered that. Vocally, it's pretty good. I don't think it's necessarily like the best roar, but it fits the music, and he has a really good cadence for the most part on here. There's too much atmosphere on here, just in terms of like outros and intros to songs. Almost every track has like some big, like sampled, like keyboard sweeping or sampled machinery or gunfire or something. Every track almost has an outro or an intro like that. And after a while, it kind of got old. It didn't necessarily need to be there. And there is, I believe, an interlude and an intro on here, which that also compounds that. I think you have enough of all this ambience to form like probably another full track on here. And I think they do what they do well, but I think sometimes they kind of go to the well too much. There was a lot of songs there that kind of repeated the same sort of feel. Just, groove-laden, big chuggy riff. It's catchy, but you feel like you heard it maybe a couple of tracks ago. But that's about it. I mean, honestly, I still enjoyed the listen, and the riffs they have are really good. They have big hooks, and it has this really cool sound to it. So I would definitely get more by this band, and hopefully there's a little bit more variety on the next one. But overall, I liked what I heard here, and that would definitely make me want to get more by them. So definitely check these guys out if you want some just beat down groovy death metal with chuggy riffs, because who doesn't? That shit's wonderful. Check it out. Into Existence, self-titled. This is the debut album from this Kansas City thrash/groove metal act. This pretty much absolutely explodes into Exorder and Pantera worship. Like right away, first track, Dissension. There's no pretense. In fact, it's the exact opposite of the last one. It just hammers you with thrashy beats, big chuggy riffs, and vocals that sound very Phil Anselmo-ish. Really solid opener. I really dug this right from the start. And then as I listened to it, I kind of noticed there was a bit of an issue with the mixing. It feels uneven just in terms of the mix, because the next song, Revenge, it seems as though the bass was just kind of cut out of the mix. Like you can't hear the low end resonate. You just kind of hear that there's a bass present in there. And I kind of ran into that throughout this album. Like it seems as though like the volume would be up a little bit more in one track versus another, but that's like kind of a studio thing. When it comes down to the music, it's pretty solid. It's a little dated, and that might just be because it really sticks close to that whole Exorder Pantera sound. Maybe like a little bit of stuff that is more like modern groove metal, like Lamb of God or Devil Driver. But for the most part, it really, really sticks to Exorder and Pantera. And that might be why it sounds a bit dated, because it stays so close to those two bands. Now, a thing I definitely like about this are the faster, thrashier sections. When they're going full bore thrashy, it kind of gets outside of that groove wheelhouse a little bit, and really kind of reminds me of like late 80s, early 90s thrash, like back when it was like getting a little bit heavier towards the end of like thrash's big run. And these guys like to favor lead melodies over like traditional solos, really. Like a lot of the lead moments are just like a really good complementing melody, which I really ended up liking on here. There are some issues with like transitions, but again, first release, these guys are still trying out stuff. But overall, pretty solid sound. I dig this. It does sound a little bit dated, and the production issues do kind of hamper it, but overall, it's still pretty damn good. So yeah, definitely check this out. Again, groove metal, thrash metal. If you like Pantera and Exorder, you should instantly connect with this. Check it out. Malignant Killdozer. This is the second album from this New York-based instrumental tech death band. Now, I had actually jammed a little bit of these guys on YouTube, and I actually heard them on Metal-O-Mania when he was doing one of his shows, and I was watching live and commenting and all that shit. This is just wild, frantic, technical, and kind of brutal death metal. When I was listening to this, it really reminded me of instrumental songs by bands like Cryptopsy, Dying Fetus, Deeds of Flesh. Fiercely technical but brutal. the bass work on here is absolutely nuts. And that's kind of the cool thing about this three-piece is you can hear each individual instrument really well. It has a nice kind of raw mix, but it's separated very well on here. The bass lines in Excavation, Eradication, and Small Town Murder 2. Man, this dude is doing all sorts of crazy stuff. But of course, every member of the band in here is doing some really wild stuff in here. The songwriting is really nice, and as much as this sounds like a dig towards Slam, kind of is, it is kind of refreshing to hear big slam riffs and breakdowns without obnoxious pig vocals. It really is kind of a breath of fresh air there. I can't get into those vocals, so actually hearing an instrumental of that style, very refreshing. Strongly recommend this band. I mean, if you like brutal death metal, if you like slam riffs, if you like really wild technical play, definitely check this out. I definitely want to check out their first one as well. I hope it is just as good as this one because this is some nasty shit. So definitely check it out. Scars or Die. This is the debut album from this Chilean thrash metal act, and the title of this album actually sounds like an ultimatum. This came out in 2019, self-released by the band, and holy shit, these guys love Overkill. Overkill or Exodus, but definitely like Zetro era Exodus, because that is almost exactly what this sounds like. Granted, a little bit more modern production, but then again, I mean, you can listen to more modern albums by Exodus or Overkill, and pretty damn close. The vocals sound so much like Bobby Blitz, it's pretty crazy. Even seems as though like the Chilean accent is kind of played back in favor of just making sure they get that Bobby Blitz snarl to it. Musically, very similar to Overkill. It's very punky thrash. It screams more early to mid 80s thrash. There's definitely some fast, almost crossover moments on here, but overall it kind of sticks to that, you know, kind of groovy stomp slash D-beat style. Pretty solid stuff. The cover's a little weird, but it's very meat and potatoes, very riff driven. Again, young band, debut release, or at least debut full length. I think they have one other EP. But yeah, if you love Overkill and Exodus, you should definitely dig this. It's pretty damn badass. So yeah, definitely check these guys out. Wulfpack, War Ain't Over. This is the debut full length from this German thrash band. Came out in 2018 on Violent Creek Records. And I gotta say, I have to bring up this opening track because the album just explodes into a song called Mr. Shitface. It's just ridiculous fun and it's a hilarious title. But this is straight up thrash metal and kind of like an all-encompassing thrash metal. Loads of groove sections, there's some crossover thrash on here. And I have to say, for a German band, they definitely seem like they favor more of like an American style of thrash. Like this feels kind of like Bay Area or like the East Coast, like New York scene, more than it does like, you know, Sodom, Crater and all that. It has sort of that punkiness that's all over like American thrash, which I was kind of surprised by. Like, you know, generally when I see German thrash, like, all right, you know, generally it does sound like most of the German thrash bands. Not that that's a problem at all because I love that shit. But this kind of caught me off guard, but in a good way. There are some absolute bangers on here. Toxic Assault, the second track, just flat out whoops ass. There's even a funky bass line on it, which I was really caught off guard by. I was like, whoa, that's actually some like Robert Trujillo kind of shit in there. I gotta say that the song Can of Business, I'm reasonably sure Testament had a song called that, but I mean, there's enough Testament worship on here that, you know, I'm willing to let that pass because solid songwriting. Like, they definitely know a lot about dynamics on here. They don't bother a lot with intros or outros. This is one song after the other, and it's different kinds of beat downs. The last song, Glory Side, is a little odd because it starts off kind of balladish and then just goes full tilt boogie into like some straight up thrash. The clean vocals aren't as strong, and the vocal production's kind of interesting on here because I think it sounds like they're doubled all the time, or there's a weird filter on it. They just sound a little bit odd. I kind of would like a more natural vocal sound, but in terms of how they're delivered with like punch and anger, and that's exactly what you want from thrash. Solid release. I definitely want to check out more by this band because this album was flat out fun. So yeah, definitely check this out. Good stuff. All right, well that knocks out this one, and this one was kind of a surprise one, so I pushed back a whole bunch of other stuff that I got just so I could do this one because I actually want to help out a good buddy there with, you know, his channel because it's still growing too. And I mean, he was kind enough to send me all this cool stuff, and this was a lot of fun to jam a bunch of bands that I had never heard before. Generally, when I do shopping, I do a little bit of research and at least listen to a couple tracks by a band unreleased just to see if I want to get it. Honestly, I had not heard really any of this stuff. Even the bands that I did know on here, I hadn't really listened to much of. Like, I had not heard that Anger's Art live release, and Malignant, I only jammed like a couple of tracks. Now hearing that full album, wow, I'm definitely a fan. So yeah, thank you, Crypt, or Chris. We'll call you Chris. He's a good dude. Definitely check out his channel, check out his Facebook. There will be links to that. Lots of cool interviews, different segments on there, different cool discussions. We pop up on there every now and then to have some goofy discussions about movies and comics and just whatever dumb nerdy stuff we want to talk about, which is pretty damn fun. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon, so if you'd like to help us out there, there will also be a link below to that, as well as a link to our giveaway going on right now. Once we hit 6,000 subs, which we are getting very close to, we will be giving away a nice little 4-stack of CDs. If you have not commented on that video, simply click that link, get on there, write a comment, and you are entered. That is all it takes. So with that, I thank all of you, and we will catch you later.